ad academia, vivat professores, vivat membrum quodlibet, vivat membra quaelibet, semper sint in flore, semper sint in flore. Vita nostra brevis est, brevi filietur. Vita nostra brevis est, brevi filietur. Venit velociter, rapidos ad fronciter, Emini pargetur. Emini pargetur.
Graduates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Council of the University of Melbourne, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this graduation ceremony. I'm honoured to preside over the conferring of your doctoral degree today. It's a very important day for each of you. That is the day upon which you graduate as a doctor in some field of learning from this great institution. Before we begin, I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of the land on which this ceremony is taking place, and pay my respects to their elders. Many of you, perhaps all of you who are graduating today, already have a long association with the University of Melbourne, and your family and friends present here today will know a great deal about the university. One thing that this ceremony today will demonstrate is the depth and diversity of the fields of research and academic excellence which you, by your study and today, will demonstrate. The University of Melbourne has come on a very long journey from 1853 to today. We believe that Melbourne graduates, and especially those who are taking doctoral degrees, are distinguished by their broad outlook and openness to different perspectives. You will come from diverse backgrounds. You've studied and researched in a great variety of fields. Thus, each of you, and as a group, have a great capacity to understand the world from other points of view, the points of view that one must have an appreciation of in a multicultural and pluralistic democratic society. Many of you will already be alumni of this university, but for those of you who are not, I welcome you to the Melbourne University alumni community. It's a large network spread across the world, and by becoming an active alumnus, you have the opportunity to nurture a lifelong relationship with your peers and the wider university community. This may take many forms. Many of you will remain within this university or other universities, but for others, it'll be time for you to take your acquired knowledge and skills into the wider world. But for all of you, you will have the opportunity, and I dare say the duty, to apply that knowledge and skills to contribute to the communities you serve. This is a day which belongs not only to those of you who are graduating, but also to parents, spouses, partners, children, friends, all those who've helped you with the long journey to the graduation ceremony today. As our newest graduates, I hope you'll uphold the core values of a public-spirited institution, the values of academic freedom, engagement in intellectual discourse, and the sharing of knowledge in an inclusive and instructive manner. I offer my heartfelt congratulations and sincere best wishes to every one of you graduating here today. Thank you. I call on the Pro-Vice-Chancellor International, Professor Simon Evans, to introduce Dr. David Bowser, who's kindly agreed to deliver the occasional address.
Chancellor, this afternoon we are fortunate to have as guest speaker Dr. David Bowser, a Melbourne graduate who is the founder of the education consultancy Curio. David has over 20 years' experience in education, research and development, and financial services, both as an academic who has worked at the Universities of Melbourne and Cambridge, and as a strategy consultant retained by CEOs and government departments to advise on complex strategic issues. David has led strategy and planning processes for more than 50 organisations, including universities, superannuation funds, multinational pharmaceutical companies, surfwear brands, and technology companies. In 2015, he created Curio Group, a collective of advisors, educators, and product developers, united by curiosity, creativity, and a desire to improve the world through education. He holds 3 degrees from this university: a Bachelor of Science with honours, Masters of Business Administration, and a PhD. He has been recipient of numerous awards and fellowships from groups including Australia's National Health and Medical Research Council and the United Kingdom Medical Research Council, and is an experienced lecturer in both human physiology and the neuroscience of decision-making. It is a pleasure to call on him to address us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. David Bowser.
Wow, you actually made it. Congratulations. Getting through a doctorate is an achievement in and of itself. I remember it somewhat fondly. My PhD grad was 19 years ago, actually, in April this year, from the University of Melbourne, as Professor Evans said, and this address certainly gave me an opportunity to pause and reflect on what's happened over those 19 years of my working life and personal life, of course, as well. This particular ceremony was important to me. But possibly it was more important to my family at the time. My friends, my supporters, my supervisors, of which there were many. But the day I actually and strangely remember even better, and I don't quite know if they still do this, but when I handed in the 5 tomes of my thesis, hard copies, ready to go to be submitted, is I was handed a red balloon. It wasn't even inflated, but I had a red balloon nonetheless. And at that point, it felt to me that I was actually almost there. After 3.5 years for myself, I was almost there. Completion of a PhD is a marvellous achievement. Traditionally, as we would know, it was a path to academia, a stepping stone to establishing your own research program or possibly an overseas postdoc. But today, these academic and research roles are fewer and harder to get. Or possibly after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe more, you've got to that point where you think, you know what, I've had enough of that. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to do something different. I'd like to give you a little of my story, a story from academia to business, to finding the combination of the two that was just right for me. I'd like to draw out some of those skills that I think you develop through a PhD, importantly, skills that employers outside academia also seek. Skills that are not easy to develop, but are increasingly demanded in our future workplaces. So after a short stint finishing off my PhD loose ends, as we all sort of have, also do a bit more undergraduate teaching, because you can never do enough undergraduate teaching. I headed off with my partner, Kylie, to Cambridge. She was completing her Master of Laws in International Human Rights, and I was taking up a fellowship at Cambridge University and was also fortunate to be able to get a fellow role at Darwin College, one of the colleges in Cambridge. 4 years passed, we had a fantastic time. Absolutely fantastic. We travelled all over Europe, and being Cambridge, and if you know where Cambridge is, it's about 30 minutes drive from Stansted Airport, and you can fly pretty much in Europe for about $60. Absolutely anywhere. We travelled, we got married, we had our first child there. I started my own lab group. It was a great time. But then it was time to head back. We headed back to Melbourne to bring back our knowledge, our experience. We knew we had worked hard, but I wasn't sure of academia. I'd given it a good go. I'd given it probably the best go you could in one of the world's top universities. I'd published in the top-tier journals. I had publications in Nature Genetics, PNAS in Science, which are really top-tier journals. I had funding, I had students. I was a very fortunate academic. I had it all going really for me. But was it really meeting what I saw as my individual purpose? But of course, instead of pausing to reflect, I kicked the can down the proverbial street and thought, just stay on the path, David. You've been on this path now for some time. Stay on the path. My success in Cambridge meant that this great university, our university, sponsored my return, and I stuck with academia through to 2010 with a lab group there in Parkville on campus. Great income, good publications, a great team around me. I love the creativity of science. I love thinking up something and giving it a go. To actually writing the grants, hilariously, was the part I actually enjoyed. I'd never been short of the ideas, but the follow-through was just not my strength. I like to solve the problems. I like to then move on to the next thing. I was happy to do it once, not 7 times, as I was often required to do. And in hindsight, when I look back and reflected, that had always been my way of doing things. I was interested in the idea, pursuing the idea, working out what it could be, and then I was interested in the next idea. The shiny new thing, as my wife likes to call it for David. So I tried web application development. Back then, that was the big thing. Started a master's in it. Interesting, but not really my thing. Tried out an MBA here at Melbourne Business School, and that actually got me. And in 2009, I completed the MBA. I wound up my laboratory group, much to the annoyance of the NHMRC at the time, and looked at what I was going to do next, the move into management consulting. I then, once again, when I reflect and I look back at it, I think to myself, well, actually, my Year 12 careers teacher, as much as I thought he was a complete nong, and I apologise if he remembers who I am and I remember who he is, was actually probably on the right track. He kept saying to me, you should be an actuary. And I thought, my God, I can't become an actuary. Medical science is way more interesting, but with great academic results in economics and maths and pretty so-so results in biology, probably made sense at the actual time. So I joined a leading consulting firm, Nous Group, helping organisations solve problems, better strategic decisions, climbed the ladder as you do in corporate world. I learned more about leadership and running a business during that time than I cared to imagine. But I kept thinking to myself, I really loved running my own laboratory group. Can I do that again in a business context? Can I create that group around me that share my drives, my interests, my experiences and what I want to do? And that's when I created this startup, an education firm called Curio. About 18 months ago, we advise education organisations like universities. We build web applications because I'm very interested in technology. And we also incubate startups, so new education startups coming in, and we deliver online education for a few universities. So on reflection, how did I move from this academic career into management consulting, starting my own company? So it certainly wasn't a straightforward journey, but I think the following are the key things that I'd learned and I'd like to pass on to you. And I called them my 6 lessons that I learned because my thesis was 60,000 words. It's one lesson per 10,000 words. What have you learnt that you can take to employers outside of academia, if that is what you choose? First up, research, analysis and insight. You've got it better than anyone else. The research and analysis part, but the insight is really important. Try to drive what you can learn from the research that you've done and the impact that it has on our society. That's what we're going to be hearing about from each of you next. Project management. You certainly learned a lot about project management, I imagine. Either one, many times, several times, but the opportunity to see how you manage a project from thinking up the idea through to how you're going to approach it, how you're going to address this particular problem, through to the analysis and presenting the outcomes. One of my favourite ones, and one that is increasingly that I look for in people that I employ in my own company, is managing up. What do I mean by managing up? I mean by managing your supervisor, right here. Managing up is a really important skill, not only in a university, but in a broader context. Being able to understand what your person is, your mentor, your manager is seeking from you, but also being able to adapt them so that they can help you address what you want to be able to address. The ability to write and communicate clearly. If you don't get that out of 60 to 100,000 words, I don't know where you get it from, but that is certainly one of the key things. Presentation skills. We've all presented at many conferences, I would hope, and taken the opportunity to present your research. Presentation skills, sadly, in corporate Australia are still very much lacking. And that doesn't mean I'm good with PowerPoint. Not at all. That's not what this is about. But presentation skills and thinking through how you communicate the ideas is what's important. And finally, group management and facilitation. I hope you took the opportunity by being in a university, if that's where you were, to teach. Teaching is an amazing opportunity to pass on knowledge to the other generations that are coming after us. Group management, facilitation, running small group teaching experiences are absolutely key to that. So on a final note, this university is your university. It's a university that has its outputs. Of course it does. It's research, its engagement activities, the way that it engages with its community, but also the graduates that it helps create. As a graduate, you and the other 360,000 of us are really what carry the university brand. We're the ones that are out there representing that brand to the wider public outside of the cohort of academics. Its excellence, of course, is part of its brand, but also its purpose. Find your purpose, reflect on it, I think, better than I did, reflect on it often, and don't forget to give back to your alma mater. Thank you.
On your behalf, ladies and gentlemen, I thank Dr. Bowser for addressing us. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Council of the University, I shall confer certain degrees. I call upon Professor Janet Herkt, Vice President of the Academic Board.
Chancellor, I certify to you and to the University that the candidates now to be presented have fulfilled the conditions prescribed for admission to certain degrees and are entitled to be admitted to the rank, privileges and responsibilities of those degrees.
I call again on Professor Herkt to present the Woodward Medal in Humanities and Social Sciences.
Associate Professor Kristen Rundle is awarded the 2017 Woodward Medal in Humanities and Social Sciences for her book exploring the legacy of noted legal philosopher Lon L. Fuller, titled Forms Liberate, Reclaiming the Jurisprudence of Lon L. Fuller. Forms Liberate has secured Kristen's international reputation as the leading contemporary interpreter of Fuller's intellectual agenda within the famous Hart-Fuller debate and beyond. Written with courage and clarity by a then junior female scholar, using methods unorthodox to the deeply intellectually conservative field into which it sought entry, Forms Liberate has already made a seminal contribution to changing expectations about what might be expected from groundbreaking scholarship in legal theory and indeed from whom. Reception of Forms Liberate quickly surpassed the level of acclaim and interest expected of a first monograph. The book was awarded second prize in the prestigious UK Society of Legal Scholars Peter Burke's Book Prize for Outstanding Legal Scholarship in 2012 and has been the subject of numerous reviews in leading international generalist law journals, including the leading UK legal and political theory journal Jurisprudence, which published a special review symposium on the book.
I will now receive the candidates for admission to doctoral degrees and call again on Professor Herkt to present the candidates for admission to the degrees of Doctor of Medical Science and Doctor of Philosophy.
Chancellor, I present to you the following candidates for admission to the degree in Doctor of Medical Science. Gung Ding Gao, who investigated how environmental and genetic factors associate with health problems in obese youth. Gung Ding Gao. Margaret Mary Moran, who investigated brain injury in newborn infants requiring major surgery in early life and the association with subsequent developmental performance. Margaret Mary Moran. Bernard Yan, who investigated the novel diagnostic and treatment strategies for acute ischemic stroke, allowing more precise tailoring of treatment for acute stroke patients. Bernard Yan. For admission to the degree in Doctor of Philosophy, Maeda Abutulabi Kakavandi, who studied friendship networks in schools and showed that contextual and individual factors shape friendship in ways that vary across different age groups. Maeda Abutulabi Kakavandi. Fazad Harakim Almandara, who investigated the role that sensor technologies can play in the emergency management sector. His research has the potential to enhance decision-making during disasters. Fazad Harakim Almandara. Mohabat Ahmadi, who investigated contemporary theatre through the lens of eco-criticism. She argues that eco-critical theatre foregrounds the agential force of non-human animals and objects. Mohabat Ahmadi. Farzan Akbaridust, who investigated the effect of straining flow on a species of harmful blue-green algae, with results that will inform water management practices for the prevention of algal blooms. Farzan Akbaridust. Turgut Esad Aktepe, who showed that the human pathogenic flaviviruses use host proteins and lipid to construct an intracellular environment conducive to efficient virus replication. Turgut Esad Aktepe. Sheikh Mohammed Alif, who investigated the role of occupational exposures in the development of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, including exposure to pesticides, solvents and metals. Sheikh Mohammed Alif. Atauda Arachige Bhagya Amara Sekara, who investigated the use of public communication networks, designed demand management approaches, and developed a co-simulation platform to verify the improved management of the smart grid. Atauda Arachige Bhagya Amara Sekara. Jennifer Marie Anderson, who examined the practice of actors who work with children, providing a unique insight into the pedagogical tactful actor. Jennifer Marie Anderson. Emma Jane Armson, who investigated the effectiveness of the Australian Takeovers Panel in resolving takeover disputes since reforms to the panel in 2000. Emma Jane Armson. Alexander Victor Bakalia, who investigated the teaching and learning associated with video games in subject English classrooms. Alexander Victor Bakalia. Matthew Donald Andrew Bach, who analysed the 1869 and 1871 British Acts aimed at controlling habitual criminals and showed that they were not enforced as rigorously as Parliament had intended. Matthew Donald Andrew Bach. Manisha Bhardwaj, who investigated the effects of roads, traffic and artificial light on the occurrence and movement of insectivorous bats in Victoria. Manisha Bhardwaj. Mohammed Abdullahil Baki Bhuiyan, who studied the biology of ray blight, an important fungal disease of pyrethrum in Australia, and developed molecular diagnostic tools to mitigate the risk of seed infection. Mohammed Abdullahil Baki Bhuiyan. Laura Ann Bienvenu, who investigated the involvement of corticosteroid hormone receptor and nitric oxide signalling on cardiac ischemia resilience. Her work provides insights into female-specific cardiac vulnerability. Laura Ann Bienvenu. Judith Margaret Bush, who studied urban green spaces and their multiple functions and benefits for cities. She analysed how policies contribute to retaining and maximising green space. Judith Margaret Bush. Christopher William Butler, who studied how memories are stored in the brain and identified specific neurons that are involved in a memory. Christopher William Butler. Krista Janaya Callender-Trevis, who investigated how tinnitus, a phantom ringing in the ears, becomes a chronic pervasive health problem. Her work has identified new targets for treatment. Krista Janaya Callender-Trevis. Jessica Dorothy Cecil, who developed novel techniques allowing direct comparison of the immunological effects of outer membrane vesicles produced by oral and antibiotic-resistant superbug bacteria. Jessica Dorothy Cecil. Emily Piern-Chan, who identified a molecular pathway by which ovarian cancer stem cells escape the cytotoxic effects of chemotherapy in vitro and regrow to produce recurrence in a mouse model. Emily Piern-Chan. Catherine Yahui Chen, who investigated cardiovascular risk and innate immune responses following Kawasaki disease and toxic shock syndrome. Catherine Yahui Chen. Joanne Suk-Chun Chu, who developed skip-stop schedules for public transportation using a variety of mathematical techniques, demonstrating how a more complex public transportation problem can be tackled. Joanne Suk-Chun Chu. Rachel Carolyn Chiaroni-Clark, who investigated how genes and environment contribute to the development of childhood arthritis. Rachel Carolyn Chiaroni-Clark. Valeria Cotrone-Baird, who investigated the extent to which employability skills are enacted in the university business curriculum and developed a typology to guide teaching and assessment practices. Valeria Cotrone-Baird. Angus David Cowan, who determined the first three-dimensional structures of the cell death protein BAC bound to lipids. Angus David Cowan. David Delacretas, who studied discrete allocation problems whose applications range from daycare placement to refugee resettlement to the working of secondary markets. David Delacretas. Kitapa Dapalaputra, who investigated the evolution of Thai slum inhabitants' role as primary housing agents in the practice of slum upgrading projects. Kitapatra Dahabalutra. Patrizia D'Orizio, who found that the placement of female characters in roles historically preserved for males in 1990s Hollywood cinema made significant changes to the genre conventions. Patrizia D'Orizio. Justin Chun Mung Fong, who investigated how humans adapt their movements, providing insights to improve the effectiveness of robot-assisted therapy for the motor rehabilitation of stroke survivors. Justin Chun Mung Fong. Richard James Fothergill, who argues that translation choices made by students of Japanese as a second language can be used as large-scale resource for studying word meaning. Richard James Fothergill. Hannah Stephanie Fraser, who investigated how ecologists use the term woodland birds, showing that species are classified to this group inconsistently and can influence scientific results. Hannah Stephanie Fraser. Svenja Fritzlar, who investigated novavirus, the major viral cause of gastroenteritis worldwide. She found that mouse novavirus manipulates several antiviral mechanisms and reduces immune detection. Svenja Fritzlar. Kelly Marie Frost, who studied Australian skilled migrants as they tried to meet the increased English language proficiency requirements when seeking Australian permanent residency. Kelly Marie Frost. Salil Goel, who developed a low-cost system for positioning a swarm of unmanned aerial vehicles in urban environments with applications such as rescue missions and disaster management. Salil Goel. Ali Hariri, who examined the fundamental mechanisms of sound production by turbulent combustion that limits the performance of gas turbine-based power generation. Ali Hariri. Muna Haidar, who investigated the control of cognitive neural circuits in the hippocampus. Her work identifies therapeutic possibilities for clinical conditions such as dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Muna Haidar. Adam John Hanna, who investigated healthcare and pension reform in Sweden and the United States. Adam John Hanna. Susan Margaret Harrigan, who used sophisticated statistical modelling to investigate initial changes in symptomatology on long-term outcomes for people diagnosed with psychotic disorders. Susan Margaret Harrigan. John Michael Harris, who undertook to display the ways in which the poetry of Anthony Hecht far exceeded its recognised hallmarks of elegance and formal style. John Michael Harris. Nicholas James Herzog, who examined the production of meaning in contemporary digital culture through the practice of appropriation in video installation art. Nicholas James Herzog. Lyndall Catherine Hickey, who developed and trialled a novel social work intervention for families of children hospitalised with an acquired brain injury. Lyndall Catherine Hickey. Amanda Christina Yott, who investigated the experiences of Karen refugee background students as they transitioned into mainstream high school. Amanda Christina Yott. Megan Jane Hurst, who investigated plant adaptation in a group of native Australasian daisies. She transplanted seeds and plants across different environments to test for adaptation to future conditions. Megan Jane Hurst. Simon John Hogg, who used genetically engineered mouse models of cancer to study the therapeutic effects of bromodomain inhibitors. Simon John Hogg. Edwin Chi Hin Ip, who investigated the impact of gender quotas on organisational performance, finding that this depends on whether the quotas are believed to enhance or undermine merit-based advancement. Edwin Chi Hin Ip. Natasha Jansch, who investigated how the protein SMCHD1 switches genes off, a mechanism important in understanding mutations associated with human disease. Natasha Jansch. Hesam Kamalipur, who investigated the urban morphologies and incremental transformations of informal settlements in Colombia, India and Thailand. Hesam Kamalipur. Konstantinos Kazakos, who investigated the role of digital technology in supporting parent-child reunion. He found design considerations that are significant in creating technologies to strengthen the parent-child relationship. Konstantinos Kazakos. Svenja Kiel, who examined the role of private sector consultants in governing climate change adaptation, studying Australia, where adaptation planning is routinely outsourced to consultants. Svenja Kiel. Zhu Jin Kong, who investigated clinical and genetic risk factors for thyroid orthopatry in Graves' disease and identified a range of factors that increase the risk of disease. Zhu Jin Kong. James Christopher Corter, who investigated the use of continuous wave excitation patterns in magnetic resonance imaging, offering the potential for new contrast mechanisms for medical imaging. James Christopher Corter. Zhiying Guo, who studied the chemical modification of ocean floor basalts, critical to understanding Earth's long-term geochemical evolution. Zhiying Guo. Please join us in congratulating these candidates once more.
It's now my pleasure to introduce the Kim Wilson duo, performing Miss Canada by Sergio Mendes. Would you join me again in welcoming them to the stage? On your behalf, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Kim Wilson duo for their performance. I will now continue to receive candidates for admission to doctoral degrees and again call upon Professor Hurt.
Chancellor, I present to you the following candidates for admission to the degree in Doctor of Philosophy. Nicholas Pun David Liao, who studied proteins involved in controlling blood cell development. His findings present opportunities to develop drugs to treat proliferative diseases of the blood, such as leukemia. Nicholas Pun David Liao. Quan Hui Lim, who investigated the problem of recommending and scheduling personalised tour itineraries using location-based social media. Quan Hui Lim. Claire Bernadette Lofnan, whose study of mandatory immigration detention rethinks the ethical potential of public office as a service to others. Claire Bernadette Lofnan. Jin Peng Lu, who studied insider sales of locked-up shares around company equity offerings and shows it is well-performing firms that are granted early release. Jin Peng Lu. Shi Ma, who showed that modern mining science and mineralogy came to permeate understandings of modern China, its territory and its people. Shi Ma. Vicky Marnicus, who examined the effect of exercise on concussive symptoms following injury and found that moderate exercise can be beneficial to recovery. Vicky Marnicus. Jennifer Ann Martin, who investigated the communication of emotions in Walkley Award-winning long-form feature articles. Jennifer Ann Martin. Emma McHugh, who investigated the trafficking of virulence proteins in malaria parasites, a process that underpins disease pathology. Emma McHugh. Peter Thomas Mee, who investigated biting midges and their bacterial endosymbionts throughout Southeast Australia. Peter Thomas Mee. Charlotte Mertens, who examined representations of the Democratic Republic of Congo and their political effects, finding that the DRC is imagined today principally through the trope of sexual violence. Charlotte Mertens. Sarah Elizabeth Miller, who examined choreographic works produced in Melbourne and argued that between 1995 and 2005, the status of the contemporary choreographer fundamentally changed. Sarah Elizabeth Miller. Richard David Murfitt, who investigated the writing and directorial processes of 3 theatre artists who began experimenting with form in the late 1960s. Richard David Murfitt. Thembelile Ndebele, who investigated the role of disability NGOs in Botswana. Her study emphasises the complexities of context which facilitate and constrain NGOs. Thembelile Ndebele. Catherine Ann Bell O'Connor, who examined the strategies and practices through which universities are taking up online learning. She found that despite commitments to student-led learning, they actually drive narrower, instruction-led approaches. Catherine Ann Bell O'Connor. Zi-Ying Ong, who examined how Legionella bacteria cause disease, silencing 18,000 human genes to determine their role in Legionella infection. Zi-Ying Ong. Manuswi Bhupesh Patik, who investigated the mechanisms of atrial arrhythmias using novel three-dimensional mapping techniques. He observed that persistent atrial fibrillation was characterised by heterogeneous activation patterns. Manuswi Bhupesh Patik. Nastaran Pamani, who investigated transit-oriented urbanism in Tehran, investigating synergies between urban morphology, transport modes and walkability around 5 major metro stations. Nastaran Pamani. Shihara Timanti Pereira, who developed an analytical model which enables designers to make accurate predictions of impact by hail and storm debris in bad weather scenarios. Shihara Timanti Pereira. Lauren Pico, who traced representations of Milton Keynes in British politics and culture. Lauren Pico. Francis Dominique Plania, who argued that biological self-preservation is a central concept in the philosophical work of Hans Blumenberg. Francis Dominique Plania. Jennifer Ann Podesta, who examined how socio-economic changes are experienced in the lives of children in sole parent families on New Start allowance in Australia. Jennifer Ann Podesta. Rebecca Joy Pryor, who studied traditional representations of the maternal body in Christian art, challenging iconographic conventions and proposing an expanded vision of the sacred in everyday life. Rebecca Joy Pryor. Donna Indu Gautami Rajapaksha, who investigated a new way of providing gene therapy that has the potential to treat liver diseases for which there is no effective medical treatment. Donna Indu Gautami Rajapaksha. Seppo Makuadi Rasakaba, who investigated hospital utilisation costs, mother and infant clinical outcomes, and user experiences of telemedicine in gestational diabetes. Seppo Makuadi Rasakaba. Nikki Juliette Rubenstein, who examined the effects of using the current knowledge of spatial relationships in vision to guide algorithms used to test human peripheral vision. Nikki Juliette Rubenstein. Asade Sabetradam Asfahani, who used multidisciplinary studies involving adult rats to investigate the neural basis of arousal and related physiological and behavioural responses. Azadeh Zabetraham Esfadi. Milad Samir, who investigated the nature of turbulent flow using novel anemometry to resolve all length and time scales in the flow across an unprecedented range. Milad Samir. Thomas Ludovic Schmidt, who investigated the ecology of 2 mosquitoes spreading dengue and Zika using DNA markers. He showed how mosquito dispersal is influenced by human environments. Thomas Ludovic Schmidt. Tom Sidwell, who studied the role of the transcription factor BARC2 in antigen receptor dependent CD4 T-cell differentiation. Tom Sidwell. Toma Simovic, who investigated why non-stick surfaces remain dry by using ultra-rough coatings he invented. This led to environmentally friendly approaches to prevent marine growth on ship hulls. Toma Simovic. Dan Zusung, who investigated the molecular interactions of nano-engineered polymer particles with biological systems. Her work will aid the design of next-generation particle delivery systems for biomedicine. Dan Zusung. Rory William Spears, who investigated diffractive imaging using cold electron bunches. His results have the potential for probing dynamic processes in advanced materials and molecular biology. Rory William Spears. Justin Colin Stout, who investigated the role of fallen trees in the development of new river channel paths across floodplains, known as avulsions. Justin Colin Stout. Sarah Suleiman Chung, who examined neurons that express a receptor RXFP3 within a brain region involved in stress and reward. Sarah Suleiman Chung. Cyrus Tan, who studied how the levels of cell surface proteins involved in immune responses are regulated by a membrane-tethered ubiquitin ligase of the March protein family. Cyrus Tan. Rick Michael Tankard, who developed a method to detect tracts of DNA known as microsatellites in high-throughput sequencing data, aiding determination of the genetic causes of some inherited diseases. Rick Michael Tankard. Samantha Jane Turner, who explored the genetic basis of speech dysfunction. Reverse phenotyping in patients with ion channel gene diseases revealed distinct speech disorders. Samantha Jane Turner. Lorraine Valladares, who investigated electronic gaming machine gamblers and found that setting a limit on spending also limited the length of time and frequency of playing. Lorraine Valladares. Upasana Varma, who demonstrated experimentally that increased heart muscle storage of glucose in the form of glycogen is associated with cardiac dysfunction in diabetes. Upasana Varma. Gary John William Veal, who investigated the role of nature in unlocking human potential and created new tools and frameworks with extensive societal and corporate application. Gary John William Veal. Vilika Aldegonda Maria Walsh, who investigated and established the accuracy of a newly designed falls risk screening and assessment tool within the acute hospital setting. Vilika Aldegonda Maria Walsh. David Keith Wright, who used preclinical models of traumatic brain injury to provide greater understanding of variability in injury progression. David Keith Wright. Carmen Chouette Munyong, who showed that different types of white blood cells could be genetically modified to react against cancer and therefore may lead to new treatments. Carmen Chouette Munyong. Hao Yuan, who investigated the oxidation of ethanol hydrocarbon mixtures in a specialised engine for octane rating and a high-pressure flow reactor. Hao Yuan. Sasha Maria Zaman, who investigated how brain energy levels control neuron excitability in epilepsy and developed a new diagnostic test that will enable clinicians to predict disease severity. Sasha Maria Zaman. For admission to the degree in Doctor of Philosophy and Master of Psychology, Kerry Ann Little, who investigated how different family experiences interact with variations in the serotonin transporter gene to predict depression during adolescence. Kerry Ann Little. Holly Andrews, who investigated characteristics, correlates and phenomenology of self-harm in youth with borderline personality disorder. She identified certain patient behaviours that will assist the work of clinicians. Holly Andrews. Catherine Frances Kane, who explored sources of irritation in social interactions. The findings suggest a preference for social interactions that maintain an individual's recurring psychologically unhealthy thoughts, emotions and behaviours. Catherine Frances Kane. Tara Lee De Pauli, who investigated the relationship between rejection sensitivity and socio-emotional processing in eating disorders using an attachment theory framework. Tara Lee De Pauli. Sally Richmond, who studied typical family environments and structural brain connectivity in children. She found certain parenting behaviours that are associated with the properties of children's structural brain networks. Sally Richmond. Vanya Rosenblatt, who examined whether adolescent disordered eating is related to the interaction between specific genetic and environmental factors. Vanya Rosenblatt. Elizabeth Jane Schultzend, who studied the role of parent cognitions in children's trauma recovery. She found that certain cognitions were associated with child and parent post-traumatic stress. Elizabeth Jane Schultzend. Nicholas Peter Ryan, who studied factors associated with the socio-emotional problems in children with traumatic brain injury. His findings have implications for early identification and treatment of social difficulties. Nicholas Peter Ryan. Please join us in congratulating these candidates once more.
I now ask the graduates please to stand. Please join me in thanking family and friends present here today for their support during your academic studies. This concludes the proceedings of the degree conferring ceremony. On behalf of the University, I have much pleasure in inviting you to join us in celebration on the ground floor behind the stage. Thank you.